We all wonder, what makes a marriage really last? Is it just about love? Is it luck? Well, it turns out there's a real science to it. And what researchers have discovered isn't just about your happiness, it's actually about your physical health. So, what did they find out in the lab? Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, a number that should really make you sit up and listen. According to the research, being in an unhappy marriage can jack up your chances of getting sick by about 35%. And get this, it can even shorten your life by an average of 4 years. Wow. So, why? What's going on there? Well, it comes down to something called chronic physiological arousal, which is really just a fancy way of saying your body is under constant, relentless stress. That endless conflict puts you in a permanent state of fight or flight, and that just wears down your immune system, making you way more likely to get sick, with everything from a simple cold to serious heart problems.
Now this is where the science gets really cool. To figure all this out, researchers set up something they called the Love Lab. I know, sounds a little cheesy, but they basically just watched couples interact in real time. And what they found was that just four specific behaviors could predict divorce with absolutely stunning accuracy. They called them the Four Horsemen. The first horseman is criticism, and it's so important to get this right. This isn't just complaining. A complaint is specific. A criticism, on the other hand, is a full-on global attack on who your partner is as a person. Think about it. One is about a specific moment. Hey, you forgot this. While the other is a judgment on their entire being. You're so forgetful. Let's make this super clear. A complaint is about a specific thing, something you can fix. There's no gas in the car. Okay, manageable. But a criticism, that's when you bring out those big, sweeping words like ever or always. It's an attack. Why can't you ever remember anything? You see the difference? One is about an issue, the other is an attack on the person. All right, the second horseman, contempt, is the most destructive of all. We're talking sarcasm, cynicism, eye-rolling, mockery. Any behavior that just screams disgust. Contempt is absolute poison because it's not just an insult, it's communicating that you feel superior to your partner. And that feeling of disgust, it's the single greatest predictor of divorce, period.
And this brings us right back to our health, doesn't it? The research shows that couples who are regularly contemptuous with each other literally have weaker immune systems. That negativity isn't just floating in the air, it has a direct physical impact on your body.
So what happens when you're hit with criticism or contempt? Well, that's when the third horseman often rides in, defensiveness. And of course, it feels like a natural reaction, but it's really just a way of flipping the blame. You're essentially saying, hey, the problem isn't me, it's you. And that, as you can imagine, never solves anything. It just makes the whole thing worse.
And when that conflict gets to be just too much, the fourth horseman shows up, stonewalling. This is when one partner gets so overwhelmed by the stress of the fight, they just emotionally shut down. They might go silent, walk out of the room, or just pretend to be busy on their phone. The research found this is a bit more common in men, but for either partner, it feels like you're being completely abandoned.
Okay, so if those four things destroy a marriage, then the key must be to just avoid arguments and practice that perfect, calm, active listening stuff, right? The whole, what I'm hearing you say is routine. Well, what the Love Lab found next is probably going to surprise you. Let's look at a real argument from a couple named Belle and Charlie. In the middle of a fight, Belle tells him that having kids was an insult to her, that it turned her into a drudge. Charlie sighs really deeply and tells her she's just ignoring biology. I mean, it is raw. It breaks all the rules of good communication, and honestly, it just sounds awful.
So, looking at that, what would you guess? It's full of what sounds a lot like criticism and defensiveness. Are they doomed?
Well, get this. Belle and Charlie have been happily married for over 45 years. So what gives? It's because underneath their fiery arguments, there's this deep well of affection and friendship. They can fight like that because their relationship is fundamentally solid. And this just proves that avoiding arguments is not the secret.
So, if even happy couples argue, and yeah, sometimes even use the Four Horsemen, what do they have that failing couples don't? Well, it turns out they have a secret weapon for getting through the tough times.
See, the key isn't to never fight. The key is what happens during the fight. It's all about how you steer the conversation away from that cliff's edge, you know?
And that secret weapon is something called a repair attempt. It can be anything. It could be a silly face, it could be saying, I need a break, or it could be a real apology. It's any effort, big or small, to de-escalate the tension. But here's the kicker. It's not just about making the repair attempt, it's about whether it works. And that success or failure is what separates a happy marriage from an unhappy one.
Let's go back to the numbers. The Four Horsemen alone can predict divorce with 82% accuracy. That's already incredibly high. But when the researchers added just one more factor, whether or not a couple's repair attempts were successful, the prediction accuracy jumped up into the 90s. That is how critical this one thing is.
Okay, so besides handling conflict, there's another really fundamental difference that separates what the researchers call the masters from the disasters of marriage. And it all comes down to a really simple but powerful idea about power.
To really get this, picture this scene. A guy named Jack is about to buy a car, but he tells the seller he wants his mechanic to check it first because he promised his wife he would. The seller, a guy named Phil who happens to be divorced, just scoffs and asks him, "You let your wife tell you what to do about cars?" Jack just kind of laughs and thinks to himself, maybe that's why. And that one little thought reveals a core finding of all this research, the massive importance of accepting influence. See, Jack isn't being controlled. He's honoring his wife and treating her like a partner in his decisions.
The research is absolutely crystal clear on this. The happiest, most stable marriages are the ones where husbands treat their wives with respect, where they look for common ground, and where they willingly share power. A relationship where one person consistently digs in their heels and resists the other's influence is, statistically speaking, way more likely to fail.
So we've talked a lot about the problems, but what about the solution? It might sound like a lot of work, but the research suggests that strengthening a marriage doesn't actually require endless hours of therapy. In fact, it might only take about 5 hours a week.
Here's how it breaks down. A few minutes each day for partings and reunions. A few more for appreciation and affection. And then a 2-hour date once a week. We're not talking about huge dramatic gestures here. These are small, consistent investments that build up what the researchers call an emotional bank account. And that's what's going to cushion the relationship when things get tough.
And that brings us to the final thought here. The science shows us that marriage isn't some great unsolved mystery. It's really just a series of small intentional choices to turn towards your partner instead of away, to accept their influence, and to fix the small cracks before they become giant canyons. So the science suggests the ultimate question isn't really what makes a marriage work. It's a much more personal one. Could 5 hours a week fundamentally change yours?